Welcome to the Wellness Creator Podcast. In this episode, we are going to discuss what it means to run a soulful business. Hello, Miss Sandy. Welcome to the
Hey,
podcast.
I think this is so funny, Jenny, because way back in the beginning of our business, we called our business, like the non-software side, the coaching and the courses side, we called it, I don't even know if we were coaching back then, but we called it Soulful MBA.
Yeah.
And there was a moment where we really pushed away from that and we changed it to Inner Circle and then we changed it to the Luminaries. And now today in 2024, we are 8, 9 years later doing a podcast on
Soulful businesses. Yeah. What I think is so kind of interesting to observe about this process is that the name of our own marvelous site,
Yeah.
formerly Namastream site, has always been Soulful MBA.
Mm-hmm.
And we never changed it, even though we've gone through so many iterations of name changes in our own coaching and course business. Yeah. And I think I always kind of wanted to hold on to it. It was also a giant pain in the rear end to change, which I think is a big part of it. But I have sort of always held on to that and always wanted to keep those domains that we have around being having Soulful MBA, because there's something about it that's kind of always felt true to me. Yeah.
Yes. And I think we've just come full circle because I really wanted to do whatever it took, push through whatever the mess and the hardness and the dislike sometimes, and just do it to get to success. And I think that was a mistake, or we went too far, or we went too long maybe doing what we didn't really want to do. And here we are. I don't know. It really is kind of fascinating. And I want to say too, for the listeners, that we last week, this is beginning of September 2024, last week we put out an episode about why we shut down our coaching business that we've been running for almost 10 years. And so the response from the listeners and a lot of our old coaching clients was beautiful and heartwarming, and they got it and they understood and they related. And that sort of prompted this conversation about we all should be running a soulful business.
Yeah. So I think that the one phrase that I've seen over and over in the different emails and text messages and DMs that we've gotten in the last few days have been I totally get it. And something along those lines. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm sad, I'm disappointed, this is kind of a bummer, but I get it. That is basically the same message from almost everyone. And I think that that's part of why I wanted to do this episode this week, was because we want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into what that means, especially in light of how we've taught business over the past decade, just to provide some clarity to all of you listening and to our customers who've gone through our materials, who are on Marvelous Teaching, or who've been through our Launch with Intention course, or the Luminaries, or the Inner Circle, or any of those programs, just to kind of give you a real explanation for kind of how we think about this idea of running a soulful business and really being aligned with your business. So we really have come full circle. The original name of our first Marvelous site, actually the stream site for ourselves in our coaching and teaching business, was Soulful MBA. And that's a name that's kept going this entire time. We never bothered to change it. I think there's just some reluctance for lots of reasons. And I think that that's very telling, given kind of our decision-making process to close down our coaching program.
Yeah. And I think I just want to say that we are doing this because of what people were telling us after they listened to our last week's podcast about closing down our coaching program. And we got so many responses that were touched my heart. They were just so understanding, and so they just got it, right? Which is what you wanted to say.
Yeah. So I think, again, the most common comment we got was, wow, I'm disappointed, I'm a little sad about this, but I totally get it.
Yeah.
And I think that given the fact that we've taught business a certain way for the past decade, we really needed to have this conversation publicly on the podcast about our thought process and kind of how we arrived at that decision. I mean, we talked about that a lot last week, but it really was rooted in this idea of wanting to kind of be true to our own souls. Like, we actually used the word souls when we were having this conversation over the last few months. And I think that that is very indicative of like why we created the business in the first place, what we wanted to get out of it, what we wanted to bring to the world through it, and then how we arrived at kind of this like culmination of letting it go. And it's not like the business is closed down. It's really the main program of the business is shut down. And new things may come from that business, but we're not ready to talk about that yet. So I just want to put that out there as well. But I also, Sandy, I really want to talk to our entire audience and our entire customer base, including folks on the software platform, because I think so many people get into health and wellness because they feel like soulfully called to do this work. And I just want to honor and acknowledge that it's very challenging to stay connected to that initial reason when you get into the day-to-day operations of running and growing a business.
Right, because you are called to do the work, but you're not necessarily called to price and market and get out there and write blog posts about your work, right? Like that's a different skill set. It's a different hat. And we know we have to wear both. But I think the calling and the soulful part is the work. I want to make the medicine. I want to sing, chant, move, whatever it is, right? And that I think is part of the disconnect.
Yes. And we've talked a lot about like how to incorporate your thought leadership and like your soulfulness into your marketing, which I still think is, I have not changed any views on that. I think that you totally can market and run like that part of your business in a way that's connected to your calling. But I do think what happens and what I've observed over the last decade in the business world, including with myself, and I'm sure you would have something to say about this as well, is that like you kind of start making compromises with your, I don't want to say values, but just like with what brings you joy or helps you feel connected. Like there's just the longer you're in business, the bigger your business grows, you sort of like chip away like bit by bit at things. And then 10 years later, you're in a situation where the direction you're going, it's like if you're using a compass and you're just like going, a degree different every month, you're going to end up 10 years later on the other side of the planet from where you wanted to get. And I think that that is so common in careers and in business because we all want to like be realistic and we want to, maybe follow a trend that we don't feel connected to, or an opportunity comes up and we feel like we have to take it because we don't know when the next one is going to come. So we kind of like compromise on what our soul is calling us to do just a little bit over and over and over. And then you end up with
misery.
something that doesn't feel good.
Yeah. So how do you think, like, how do you rein that in? How do you become aware? Because I agree with it is like so like it's a tiny thing in the moment. It's a tiny thing. It is literally 1 degree. But how do you know?
I mean, I think this is all about like intuition and intention and soulfulness, like all of these words that we kind of throw around, these woo words. But like if you really define them for yourself, they have a real meaning. So I think I am like a big fan of morning pages, of journaling, of connecting to yourself. I think that you have to be checking in on a very regular basis with, does this feel right? Is this taking me where I want to go? And like, if I keep going down this path in 5 years, where do I end up? Like, I think that's a constant process that we have to evaluate against.
Yeah. And I think too, in that process, there's like, am I people pleasing or who am I trying to please versus, because you say yes to the podcast that you don't really want to be on, or you say yes to, hiring some YouTube coach that's convinced they can double your views or whatever. Right. And it's like, where are the moments where you don't want to feel the discomfort and the friction versus what you really want to do? And
Yeah.
That's for me been a really big deal, is like the clients want this and the clients like this, or the team likes this, or whomever it may
Yes.
be. And it's like, but I don't really want to do it anymore. Or
Yes.
I don't really, and that's, so the people pleasing, I still think is a huge part of this, again, especially for women in business.
Yes, I would say that at least 75% of the mistakes I've made in business were because of people pleasing, mostly our team and sometimes each other. Like, I will put that out there. Like, there was a period in our business where I made daily decisions based on my fear of pissing someone off,
Right.
and that I felt accountable to, or that I felt like we needed. And so I just want to say, like, that you asked this question, how do you know if you're going off track? Like, if you're kind of veering away from that soulful business. I think fear, for me, like, I think it's totally convoluted with people pleasing, but when I have made decisions out of fear in business, it has pretty much never worked out. And so I think that, like, so you can connect with that through journaling or through meditation or whatever, however you going on a morning walk and noticing your thoughts. Like, if you are making decisions because you were afraid for whatever reason, then I would just like put the brakes on and really think about that harder before you make that decision and commit.
Yeah. I think emotion is the way to tell. Like,
Yeah.
emotion, what you are feeling is your sign, your guidepost. For me, I resent a lot of, I get angry and I'm resentful. And so those are my two sort of warning emotions that something has gone off the rails. Why are you laughing at that?
And just like so true.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's just like so obvious to me when you're like in that state. And I'm sure my like
Fear.
paranoid, fearful state is whatever. It's triggering for you too. I think I part of the reason why I really wanted to talk about this on the podcast is because so many of you who are listening to this have either gone through like a free version of kind of our Become an Online Teacher that we used to have, or have been through Launch with Intention or the Luminaries or something. And in those programs, we have always emphasized, and on the earlier iterations of our podcasts, we've always emphasized this importance of building a business around solving a problem, an important problem for a specific group of people. And I want to talk about how these two ideas are connected, because I don't see them as like mutually exclusive from one another. So you need both. I mean, the short answer is you need to solve a problem for people, and you need to also stay true to your soul and your, the reason why you want to have your business. Like, I think both of those things are true. If I had to pick one, and this is what has changed over the last few months, if I had to only have one to start with, I actually would advocate for, especially in our industry, in the wellness industry, I would advocate for having like the passion and having the soulful connection to your work above serving a specific group of people and solving their problem. Because I think you can create that when you are bringing a ton of energy and new thinking and content out into the world and thought leadership. I think you can manufacture an audience to purchase what you're selling. And I think you'll know very quickly whether that's working or not. And if it isn't, then you need to pivot, right? Like, otherwise it's not a business, it's a hobby. I no longer, and maybe never was, a fan of just building a business where you're solving a problem and a pain point specifically just to make money. Like, we would not have built the businesses that we've built if we were just about that, right? Like, we would have gone into other industries that are more lucrative, where we were selling enterprise software for like $18,000 a sale. Like, we would have made different decisions anyway. But I think that over time, as we were teaching this content, I became kind of, I don't want to say brainwashed, but I became a little more cynical about the idea of like even having a soulful connection to anything or even having passion for anything. Everything became so, over time, so much of a job.
Yeah. Like, you're an employee. You're responsible to.
You're just doing your job. Yeah.
And you would say that. You'd say,
Yeah.
you know what? It's just my job. I can do anything. It's just
Yeah.
my job. For 2 hours a week, I'm going to go do X. I
Yeah.
can do it. It's my job, right? And it's like you forcing yourself into a place where you don't want to be. So, yeah, I agree with you. I do think there has to be a problem. Like, I don't want people to think that you
Yes.
can just be like, I'm going to go sell chair yoga or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to go sell chair yoga. And then, but you don't really identify the market and the problem and like you still need to be smart about that, but you have to be connected soulfully to the work.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also would say if you are completely, deeply, intuitively, passionately connected to helping people heal their mobility and their pain through chair yoga, you can go build a multi-million-dollar business like right now in that industry. But you have to be so effing passionate and interested in like all of the levers that it takes to scale that you have to like, it has to not just be like, oh, I think I'll do this. I'm kind of good at this. It has, so like when I say like passion and soulful, intuitively connected, I mean from a place where it's like, I'm going to go conquer the world with this thing. And that's the energy I'm bringing to it.
And you're not afraid to go be visible and
Right.
speak and
Right.
talk and
Yes.
let everyone know what you're doing because you're so dang
Yes.
excited about it. I think I don't want people to think like a soulful business is an inactive business and it's just like love and light. It all comes to me and manifesting. I don't believe that. I agree that energy, what you bring to your business is crucial, but you still have to go take action.
Yes.
And that can be fueled by your
Yes.
passion and your excitement, but it doesn't mean you sit back and like wait for people to find you or like that Prince Charming syndrome where it's like, someone will come and find me and I'll make somebody's going to start talking about me. You got to go do that. And no matter what business, you have to take action. I just see a lot of women procrastinating and waiting and like hoping and just like really passively running a business. But yeah, I think you're right. With the energy and if you love it, you are going to go talk about it.
And that's the energy we brought for like the first at least 5 years that we brought to everything together. And I woke up every day like so freaking excited to do this work. Like there was a period of time where I was still practicing law and I would be like doing our podcast editing and writing show notes, like in the car on the ferry boat, like I was like, oh shucks, like I have to put my passion away while I go to work and be a lawyer for a little while, and then I pick it back up after. Like it was the thing I could not wait to get to. And so I just want to put that out there, like the level of like soulful connection, that's like what we're talking about, is like this is the thing that makes you jazzed when you wake up in the morning. And you cannot, like, and I will shout this from the rooftops forever, you cannot half-ass a business and expect success. Like maybe you got lucky during 3 months of the pandemic and that happened. Like that's never going to happen again. Like that is not real. That was like a momentary blip. And so like I think that the sad, hard thing for me in like the last few years has been dealing with, in our industry, I think these like very unrealistic expectations on behalf of the people who got started and swept into business because of the pandemic, who otherwise like would have worked for someone else, or maybe would have found business at a later time in life when they had a different energy for it.
Yeah.
But you can't make this shit up. Like you have to really want to do it.
Or people who through the pandemic survived and threw whatever up online, and now they're stuck with a business that they hate or a business model or a topic, right? And they're too afraid to go and change it because people pleasing the clients, this is what they want. They show up every week. I can't let them down. You know what? And you can say no, you can pivot, you can change. And yeah, it sucks. And most people will understand, as we've just experienced.
You know, that's so interesting, Sandy. I want to give an analogy to our own business, our own coaching program, which is now shut down because of this. And I had not put this together until I just heard you say what you said. And that is the fact that part of my discomfort, and like, I don't want to say hatred because I didn't hate it. I just It was not like the ideal business model for me to be a part of for a long-term time.
Mhm.
Part of why our coaching business evolved the way that it did was very much due to the pandemic. We went from having something that was like, I don't know, at the most one call a week, but like even less frequent for a lot of its iteration. It was like very much a self-study and in a written community. We had like an online community with people posting questions, and we were always in there answering questions and sharing links, and people were helping each other. But during the pandemic, the first couple months of the pandemic, there was such a need in our industry to provide tremendous support that we just like became a huge, robust community space with like, I think at one point we had calls every single day of the week. We had multiple coaches in there, like 3 coaches in addition to us at one point. It became this like, I don't know.
Monster.
Yeah, a monster, like a giant kind of always on consulting,
Mhm.
always
Mhm.
interactive thing
Mhm.
while we're running a software company that's like sort of like growing exponentially. Like that to me was the experience of like maybe if that program had not evolved in the way that it had because of the
So quickly.
pandemic, we would
Mhm.
still be doing it and loving
Mhm.
it, and it would have been a different animal. And so I just want to say like we weren't immune from what you're talking
Right.
about either.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I don't
we
regret it
reacted.
because the community needed that at the time. The industry needed it.
Mhm. And we did make small changes, like we took some of the coaching calls out that weren't well attended, and we just,
Yeah.
like it was awful and awkward to like say, hey, this one's not going to be there anymore. We just
Yeah.
kind of slowly backed up,
Yeah.
trying to create what we wanted, but
Yeah.
we just could not get back to that place of joy and soulfulness with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that there was, when you talk about resentment, and because I just want to be honest with people, and you're not the only one that feels resentment, Sandy. Like, for people, I am an introvert. For anyone that doesn't know, you're not, but I am, but you're very good at boundaries. And I think for someone like me to have had years and years where I just kind of have to be available to so many people
Mhm.
all the time,
Yeah.
that took a toll on me. And I think that there was like this sort of, I don't know, subconscious maybe, or a little bit of conscious resentment, just always like not just
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
client, like just for everyone, for team, for clients, for like the world, like just people DMing on Instagram when
The
we were
damn
still home,
inbox. Yeah.
just like back the F off. Hey
Mhm.
world,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
sorry, the lights are out. And I think that maybe that's burnout, maybe that's exhaustion. Like I don't know, but for me, it was like this is no go. Like I I don't know. Like I'm not wired for this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, yes, I am extroverted, but that was a lot. Like
Yeah.
every angle,
Yeah.
24/7, your phone is dinging, my
Yeah.
phone is dinging with people who need help or who want something or want a favor, who want to ask
Yeah.
something or who want a deal, who want like help or
Yeah.
have a question
Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it is interesting to reflect that a big part of this, and I didn't put this together, that it is still kind of the tail end of like
Yeah.
post COVID hangover of like we're still trying to clean up the mess that event created for us,
Yeah.
personally and business wise.
Yeah.
And I do want to say, Jenny, all of that was happening in those years, you also were dealing with long COVID. Like you
Yeah.
were very sick on
Yeah.
top of it all, on
Yeah.
top of the demands and the decisions and the holy shit, what do we do now? And like, just navigating territory that nobody had, as we all did. But like you were really sick, and we are going to be posting an episode of you talking about that time in the upcoming weeks. So because it's fascinating and really inspiring to hear what you did through there. But
I
anyway, that's a
wouldn't
little
call it that, but
off
thank you. But
off
yeah,
topic, but
yes. I mean, and I think it's like so many people who
yeah.
became very, very ill, right? Like there's a lot of degrees of illness, different kinds
Hmm.
of illnesses and mental illnesses and actual COVID hospitalizations and all kinds of terrible things that people experienced. But you're right, like it's all tangled up for me. So I think just to go back to this idea of soulfulness, like I think that's rooted in intentionality in making decisions not from fear. And again, during the
Hmm.
pandemic, we were all making decisions because of
Yeah.
fear,
Yeah.
like lots of different fears. And I think that part of what running a soulful business means is like being very aware of what is factoring into your decisions.
Yes.
I I have had this since we made that decision to shut our coaching program down, like a month and a half ago
Yeah.
was when we
No,
made that
I don't even think
decision.
I think it's like 4 weeks ago.
Yeah. It was like, it's a life-changing transformation, I think,
Yeah.
for probably both of us.
Yeah.
Like everything is different now.
I wanted to talk about that now that we do feel like back in line, aligned. It's like I felt like I had a like a anchor, dragging behind me, and I was
Yeah.
just slow and like, lethargic, and just I couldn't go.
Yeah.
And the freedom, and I think that's like one of my, I think it is for a lot of people, one of my values is like, don't tell me what to do. And just like the openness and the spaciousness. And like this morning I woke up early because we've got this mammoth project, and I love that everyone's writing to us calling it this mammoth project. Can't wait to hear what your mammoth project is. I was thinking about it and thinking about it, and I realized this morning, I'm like, oh, this is what it should be like. This is what it should be like. Like questions, like I'm trying to solve for things, like how do we explain that? How do we talk about that? How do we get that message out? And it was like, oh my God, this is what it used to be like pre-pandemic, right? But I never would have got there if we held on to the coaching to keep our clients happy. I never would have gotten here. I would have been like, oh.
Yeah. And that's not a logical argument because it was not enough like hours to explain it, but it is like a spaciousness and our minds, I think, and an access to, for me, creativity, which it sounds like it's the same kind of thing for you. Like I cannot be in administrative mode and creative mode at the same time.
Right.
Newsflash. Like those two things do not go well together. So when you are in your business, and to me, running a soulful business, like there has to be some like access to that creative life force. That's like the soulful connection for me in business, is actually like tapping into that creativity.
Yeah.
But when you're like now I've got to file the insurance payment, and now I've got to do the coaching call, and then I have like 3 questions to answer, and then I've got to go on this team call. Like, nope.
Yeah.
Creativity,
and there's people
is
that
gone.
thrive on that, right? And they'll recognize that, but that is not you or I.
Yeah.
I also want to talk about, since we made the decision, like how much fun you and I have had.
I know.
I don't know the number, but I would be embarrassed to say how many hours you and I have spent on the phone / Slack huddle talking and weaving through things and like dreaming and just bullshitting and talking and like saying ridiculous, like it's been so fun, but hours, like we will spend 2-3 hours on Slack just talking, and we never do that.
Well, we did in the first 5 years.
Yeah.
That's all we did.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's like the birth of everything. I mean, that's what I'm trying, like, yeah, we're back. Like it's not like, oh, this is a new phase. I'm sure it is, because like whatever, but it's like, it feels like it did. Right. I'm just thinking about like when I moved into my house, my last house in Washington, and like working off of like my desk was a cardboard box, and I was sitting on the floor, and it was just like Thanksgiving, and like things were crashing with the app. Like, but I was so freaking happy. I was stressed, but it was like the adventure of a lifetime, and it was fun, and it was like I have not had that energy in a long time, like years, and that is like, you and I are really good operating from that place together. So I just think, like, folks, if you are feeling disconnected in your business, like, you need to listen to that. Like, I think that we maybe did not set the best example for the last couple of years of like pushing through. We did the best we could. No, whatever. We can't change anything. But like, if I could go back and do it differently, I would have ended this sooner. And really listened to that inner soulful calling to be able to access the part of running a business that brings me joy.
Yeah, I would have done the same. I would have, like, it was literally years that we talked about it, and it should have been shut down probably a good year ago. But anyway, whatever. No regret.
2 years.
No regret.
2 years. But yes, because we were both like dead inside for the last couple years. I mean, that's just being honest. And I think people don't talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah. But I do like, there is another side. Like if you are experiencing this and don't want to sell what you're selling, or you need to do a huge pivot,
Yeah.
or you need to shut it down and start something new, or whatever it may be, or leave a career and come, into the online space, there is another side that is like beautiful and fun and
Yeah.
exciting,
Yeah.
and like you can never go wrong. I don't think you can never go wrong if you follow that sort of soulful bliss.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. And I think part of it is being honest. And this is the other thing that I will point out that I think was really helpful for me. And I know I shared a lot of this with you already, Sandy, which was like I was really looking at businesses that I was jealous of. I was
Yeah.
really trying to notice where I was feeling envy. And I know we're like kind of in one school of thought, we're taught to like that's kind of a bad, a bad thing to pay attention to, or that's negativity, or you're just comparing yourself. But I was like, there's a real reason why I'm watching people in these businesses and I'm so freaking jealous. And then I'm also paying attention to other founders and their businesses and their stories, and where I'm like, oh, hell no. Like, I don't want anything to do with that. Listen to those things. Those are breadcrumbs. Those are your soul's breadcrumbs.
Yeah,
Like,
Sarah Fisk says what you are
yep.
jealous of is what you
Yes.
is really what you want,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yes.
so,
And
yeah,
I
listen to it.
think that was like when you and I have had a lot of conversations about this, and we almost started a different podcast together like 6 months ago because of this. We were both really inspired by certain other podcasters, actually, who were that like the podcast is their entire business, and they were sharing honest, heartfelt, real, authentic, raw conversations. And that was where my jealousy was. Like for the last few years I was like so jealous, especially because of cancel culture and because I like shut myself down for years. I just know it was a noticing of the craving. Like, I don't want to be quiet and muted and like running
Demure.
a business from an administrative place,
Yeah.
like for the next 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that doesn't, like, I'm not a good parent. I'm not a good partner. I'm not a good friend. I'm not a good anything from that place. Like, I just saw how I was showing up in the world and it was terrible. So, like, listen to those jealousies, listen to those, just this, your soul is giving you information. Listen to it.
Yeah. You can run a soulful business. It's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
Okay, Jenny. Good
All
chat.
right. Thank you for the chitty chat, Sandy. All right, folks, we will see you next week.
Bye.